Welcome to How to Implement Guided Math in a Socially Distanced Classroom. I'm Cassie Smith, your presenter today. I'm the founder of Thrifty in Third Grade, and I've been creating curriculum for 7 years. One topic that I'm most passionate about is guided math and making it doable in your classroom. Because this is such a unique year, I felt that we needed to get together to talk about how we can manage this with the obstacles we're facing this year. So thank you for joining, and I hope you get some ideas out of this webinar that can make you feel encouraged about the year ahead. Before we begin, I want to answer the question that I know is on your mind. Can it even be done? Can we really have guided math, small groups, in a socially distanced classroom? Well, the answer depends on your perspective and, of course, the guidelines in your district. But I have to say, I believe it can be done. If you are open to being flexible, then I think you can come up with ways to make this work in your classroom. One of the things I teach teachers is my unique approach to guided math, which I call flexible guided math. It's a different approach in that students don't rotate the classroom. Instead, they spread out throughout the room and work on must-do and may-do tasks while the teacher pulls students to the teacher table. Group members, group sizes, and times are not set. It's extremely flexible and can change daily. Having a flexible approach mindset will help you imagine this in your classroom as we talk more about guided math throughout this presentation. We're going to discuss 3 different approaches today, as well as some plans for materials. I love this quote. Small group instruction is not better than whole group instruction. They both have their place. Teachers just have to know when to use them. I really love this quote. In a regular school year, this quote makes me think about the balance between whole group instruction and small group instruction and using both in a strategic way. This year, I am reading this quote a little differently, especially the last line, teachers just have to know when to use them. Well, let's face it, if your school district has said you cannot have small groups, then this wouldn't be a time for you to use small group instruction. You have to know when to use them. Let's think about this further as we talk about some different approaches you can use this year. So now we're going to discuss 3 different approaches to implementing guided math in a socially distanced classroom. I am hoping that at least one of the approaches feels doable to you. The 3 approaches are the socially distanced group, the alternate space, and the whole group breakout. Okay, let's jump in with approach number 1, the socially distanced group. With this approach, you are still having small group at your kidney or group table. The difference, however, is that you are letting social distancing happen at that table. Some ways to do this are to seat students every other seat at the table and to possibly create a second row of chairs behind the first row. This will, of course, depend on the amount of space you have. Students who sit in your second row would need something sturdy to write on if they're not at a desk. You could use a whiteboard or a notebook. This is just a quick classroom layout that I threw together. You can see the kidney table in the bottom left corner. So if you sat 3 students at the table and 3 students in the row behind in either chairs or desks, you could have a small group of 6. Now you may be looking at this and thinking there's no way, I don't have this much space around my table. Okay, I understand. But what is important to keep in mind is that you may also only have maybe 50% of your class attending school at one time. And if that's the case for you, you may be able to make some room. In approach number 2, we will discuss using an alternate space in your classroom for guided math. You are no longer using a small kidney table in this approach. Instead, you may have 2 long rectangle tables put together with your small group of students spread out every other seat. I know this can't work in every classroom if you don't have space for longer tables. If there is a possibility of it working, consider moving your kidney table to a different room for storage for this year. If you're short on space, seriously consider moving unnecessary furniture out of your room for the year. Now, if you don't have larger rectangle tables at your disposal, just focus on trying to create a gathering place where your students can spread out but still be focused on you. All right, so this isn't perfectly drawn to scale, but I just threw this image together to show you social distancing at two larger rectangle tables. Typically, you could seat 6 students at each table, but by cutting the amount of students per table in half, you are able to get a small group of 6 across 2 tables. In a situation like this, the teacher would be walking around the table during small group instruction instead of sitting and teaching like they would at a kidney table. So say you can't get your hands on large tables like these. Well, you could leave the entire space empty and have just 6 chairs set up. Socially distance the chairs and have students use personal whiteboards on their lap. Approach number 3 is the least like typical guided math groups. This approach is called the whole group breakout. In this situation, the teacher is not teaching in small groups. Instead, the lesson is delivered to the whole class. After the whole group lesson, there is then breakout time for centers. We'll talk more about managing centers and materials in just a few minutes. Now, as the students are working on their independent practice from the whole group lesson, the teacher would travel the room offering support. As students finish, they would work on their must-do and may-do activities. The teacher would then pull 1, 2, or 3 students at a time to get extra support at the kidney group table, or the teacher could help them at their own desk. All right, let's talk about managing materials for guided math. We're going to talk about centers, technology, and other materials. I'm actually going to discuss them in the opposite order that they are listed here. So let's start with other materials. In this case, I'm talking about student whiteboards, dry erase markers, scissors, glue, dice, timers, highlighters, math manipulatives, all of the different materials your class would typically share. Now, your district will probably release guidelines for you about community supplies like this. Either you will need to have some for each student, or you'll need to do sanitation between uses. I recommend having hand sanitizer near any supplies that must be shared, and to have your students sanitize their hands before and after they use them. In all honesty, I think it's best practice to avoid sharing these materials as much as possible. Try to let students have their own things as much as you really can. All right, next up is technology. Unless you have enough for each student to have their own, you are going to need to come up with a plan for sanitizing in between uses. You can also choose to only let a certain amount of students use technology each day if you are limited on devices. Then you can sanitize after school and let the next group of students get a turn on them the next day. All right, finally, let's talk about centers. Here's my recommendation. I would make center binders. Put many extension activities in sheet protectors, and students only do the centers that are in their binder. Students can write on the sheet protectors with dry erase markers, and when guided math time is over, they can use hand sanitizer to wipe off the sheet protectors. This helps get off the dry erase marks and also sanitizes. You can rotate the binders each day so students have different centers to choose from. You could also make individualized center binders to differentiate your centers for your students if you need to. These don't have to just be dry erase activities, but they could also be puzzles, sorts, and dice games. Just keep the materials for each center tucked into the sheet protector. Let's take a look at an example. Here's an example of a center binder. Now, these example photos are from my 5th grade guided math units. I just wanted to give you an idea of how these different activities can be used in sheet protectors. So this is a dice game. Students will need an expo marker and dice. You can keep the materials for the entire binder in the very top sheet protector. You can just have a blank one in the front with materials in it. And students can just grab what they need as they work their way through activities. You can also stick a math drill fact fluency sheet in a sheet protector so students can practice their math facts. You can get fact fluency drills from math-drills.com, and you can print off fluency pages as well as the answer keys, and you can just stick those on the back so students can self-check their facts. In the back of that sheet protector, you can put another activity. This is another dice game. The page beside it is a board game center. You can give students a board game piece like the one pictured here, or you can let them use something from their own desk as their piece. They can use something as simple as an eraser cap. In this activity, students will roll dice, move their piece, and solve the problem on a separate sheet of paper. This could be a sheet of notebook paper that you have them turn in, or it could be a page in their math notebook. This center activity on the left is a spinner game, and students would just need a paper clip to do this. To make a paper clip spinner, you just put a pencil in the space of the paper clip and then hold it and flick the paper clip. Students would record their answers to this in their notebooks or a separate sheet of paper. The final center here that I have an example of is a puzzle center. You would have the pieces all cut apart and put inside the sheet protector, and then students would pull them out to do the puzzle. You could also have them solve their problems on a separate sheet of paper. I hope this webinar gave you some ideas of how you can implement guided math next year. If you are looking for materials, I have many guided math resources in my TPT store. These year-long bundles include everything you need for the entire school year: practice pages, assessments, centers, you name it, lesson plans, it's all in there. The individual units are also sold separately if you just want to grab one topic at a time. I'm also in the process of creating digital companions for guided math. These are Google Slides activities and are companions to my guided math units. They are not included in the guided math units because they are a completely separate resource. These are a great way to balance in-class instruction and any remote learning you may need to do. That way, students can still practice the skills at home. But if you don't end up doing any remote learning, these are fun digital centers or activities that you can use in your whole group instruction. You can learn more about all of these resources in my TPT store. At the time of this original recording, 3rd and 4th grade digital companions are completely finished. I'm working on 5th grade next, and then 2nd and 1st. As you gear up for the new school year, I recommend prepping as much as you can over the summer. Get your sheet protectors, dry erase markers, dice, paper clips, get everything you need ready to go. That way, when school starts, all you need to do is choose the activities and slide them into those sheet protectors. All right, I hope this helped. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. My email address is thriftyinthirdgrade@gmail.com.